Hi, welcome to the first of a short series of webinars designed at pulling together some support and resources that aid the reintroduction of rugby back into educational settings. The aim of these sessions will provide some ideas and tips on session plans you can run within your environment, and also to make sure that these sessions are compliant with our current stage of return to rugby roadmap. This week, happy to be joined by Phil Kearns, who's our National Coach Development Manager at the RFU. I've been heavily involved in the work to get rugby activity back up and running and help support some of the resources that we'll go through today. So welcome, Phil.
Thanks, Dave.
Just before we get going, is it worth just going through a couple of those resources that would be worth having a look at if this is your first time delivering rugby?
Yeah, certainly. Firstly, the actual return to grassroots rugby guidance document, which is quite a comprehensive document, but it outlines in detail exactly what needs to be in place to follow our guidance that was signed off by government in terms of our return to rugby and what activity you can and can't do. So I think understanding that document and what sort of things you need to put in place to allow rugby to take place is really key. I think also looking at the formats of the game, so we've got non-contact offer at the moment, which is touch and ready for rugby, which is a new format of the game around the double touch version. So going onto those, the webpage on ER.com and identifying which resource you want to look at and getting the full details of how to use them games. And then finally, there's also a YouTube clip around the ready for rugby, which identifies what the rules are and how it's played with the different format and what the maximum playing numbers are, etc., pitch sizes, and I'll give you all that information.
Thanks, Phil. We have tried to pull all those resources together in one simple place. So if you follow the link on screen, that'll take you to our Return to Rugby kit bag, and all the links to resources that will support reintroduction of rugby were there for you to download and have a look at. So definitely worth having a look at those when you get a chance, especially the Ready for Rugby, because that will form part of our kind of main content of this session. So if we look at our first session plan that we're going to provide on this webinar, is aimed at as a kind of starter session for those introducing the new two-touch format who've not played it before. It also looks at developing their decision-making around before, during and after a tackle, and it also goes some way to developing their kind of ability to catch and pass and support. So they're the kind of outcomes of this first session. It's worth having a look at that reintroduction document. It'll give you some tips on size of groups, what to do with your equipment, how long to play for, the size of pitches, all the detail can be found into that. But as a starter, we would suggest using our Activate program, which is detailed online, and the preparation set one. The link's there for you to go and have a look at that, and some YouTube clips on some simple activation activities you can take place with your players that are kind of compliant with our current stage of delivery. And as a warm-up, we'd also recommend using rugby netball, which is a simple kind of game. Can't run with the ball, but you can pass in any direction. A try is scored by catching the ball over a try line. If the ball goes to floor, just turnover possession. Defence, their role is to try and intercept the ball in the air. Also, to provide a bit more space for the attackers, two defenders must just touch the floor after a successful pass by the attack. We think these warm-ups will not only activate the kind of body and the joints and muscles, but also it'll support some of the catch and pass skills that they're going to look into in the kind of main part of the session. Phil, could you talk us through the kind of game zone, skill zone approach to this session as well, please?
Yeah, so game zone, skill zone is sort of the template for delivering sessions within rugby union that we would use at the RFU. It is, as I say, game zone is what it says really. It's a game activity, so players involved in a game activity with a purpose, usually driven by one of the principles of play, and linked to a skill development piece as well. The skill zone would be related to the game zone, so what are the skills needed in the game, and players having the opportunity to go out and either practice those with more opportunity of repetition or having less or increased pressure depending on the stage of the player within the session and how they're performing within the game and how the game outcomes are being played.
So for the main game zone session here, we're suggesting using the Ready for Rugby two-touch format. Could you just give us a quick overview? We'll also put a link into the resource that Phil mentioned before, so you can see that live in a video session. But Phil, it might be worth just going through the kind of the main rules of that Ready for Rugby game.
Yeah, so Ready for Rugby is a game. What it says, it's actually looking at preparing players ready for when contact rugby can resume, and it's sort of a stepping stone into that. So two touch allows players to play, use the ball either pre, during, or post the touch tackle. So similar to contact rugby, where players have that decision to make before the contact. So players have an opportunity to, after the first touch, they can either run, pass, or if they're in what we call the attack zone, they can kick the ball. On the second touch, that counts as a phase. So the ball carrier must stop, throw the ball up in the air above the head, catch, and then pass to a supporting teammate. I think it's important that you'll have 4 phases to each team to get into the attack zone. And once you're in the attack zone, you have another 4 phases to score. The attack zone really is just a simple format of way of just allowing players to identify how they can go forward within the game, because often in touch we tend to play sideways. So it's encouraging players to go forward, and then attack zones can be varied as explains in the full Ready for Rugby guidance and in the video.
Thanks, Phil. And in terms of the skill zone, we'd recommend that this would be done whilst the kind of game takes place, and kind of pull in 2-3 players out at a time to work with them on some of their skill development.
Yeah, definitely. So again, looking at the skill zone, it would be isolating some of the incidents that we would see in the game. So the ball carrier trying to beat a defender. So that would either be by evasion or by using a pass to a supporting player. So what we can do is we can take a small element of that game out and put it sort of under a microscope and look at that. What my recommendation here would be to try and group players together in terms of how they're performing in the game. So what are we seeing in the game? Players sort of identifying it might be something they need to work on, so we can take them out and reduce the pressure. Actually, it might be something that players are really good at in the game, so we could take a group of players out and look at how we could increase the pressure, and then see what opportunities that affords the players as they get back into the game setting. So I think it's important that we try to differentiate that as much as possible based on what we see from the game itself.
Thanks, Phil. We'll put a link in there as well for another YouTube video that explains that little skill zone and how you can deliver that as well. You kind of touched on there about kind of player development. We're kind of encouraging the use of these kind of 3 stages of player development within the sessions. Do you want to talk us through what these mean for you?
Yeah, certainly. So this would theoretically be where the journey we'd like to take the players on. As I'm sure we all know, it's not as simple as that. So we would look at firstly just enthusing the players, so getting the players excited about playing the game and understanding. We also need to gather their confidence and build their confidence. So some players may be reluctant to want to take the ball forward, etc. So what we might do is look at ways how we can build confidence in certain players. We then look at how we might support them. So once they're enthused and they've got some competence and they're performing in the game, how can we support them to get even better? So what opportunities do we have within the gameplay itself to give them individual challenges and to support other people, not necessarily just themselves, in getting better? And then finally into that stretch piece. So actually, can we stretch the players to really challenge them and put them under increased pressure to make the decision, so they're not finding the practice too easy or the game too easy? Now, as we will know, it's not players will move into these different sort of sections at different paces and different speeds. It's important that we recognise where players are and that players may fall backwards as well as move forwards within this. So, for example, as the game rules progress, some players may drop back into needing some more confidence, or they might accelerate straight into needing some stretch because it might be something that they're really good at in terms of problem solving, for example. So listed here is just some examples of what we might be able to do to build confidence. So, for example, giving someone extra touches to run forward would help them build confidence that actually they can go forward and they're not got as much of a consequence as some of the other players. What that also might allow them to do is some of the players who may be more advanced within the game may look to utilise those players more to get them to go, because they'll have an opportunity to go forward at a greater pace. I think then it's about looking at how we support them. So what can we do to put in place, such as setting them a challenge maybe to not just think about what they might need to work on and how they can develop. So passing off less dominant hand might be something that we can look at as getting the players to think about, how can I get even better? Okay, I've done something well here. How can I get even better at it? And then also within that, how am I going to support the players who are still struggling with confidence a little bit? So using those players who have got some experience and got some competence to support the players who are still needing that confidence. And then moving into the stretch, looking at how we can really put the players under some pressure and challenge not just their skills, but also their decision making, potentially their behaviours as well within the game, by making, assigning some challenges, making some points rewards. And I think it's important that we still, even though we're trying to stretch the players, we still offer them some reward and success, and have that real good balance of success and learning taking place.
Thanks for that. I mean, it's something we'd really encourage, using that kind of coaching and teaching skills to actively look within your sessions for individuals that you could kind of fit into those kind of 3 stages, and how you can support them, develop them, stretch them, how you can kind of build a confidence to kind of fall in love with the game and build an enthusiasm for it as well. So it's something we'll try and continue. If you've got any other ideas that you'd like to share, please do so. You can use our Twitter at Age Grade Rugby. If you've got any queries on this as well, please do email us at schools@rfu.com. But we'll continue to use these kind of 3-stage development and come up with different ideas that we think that kind of teachers and coaches can use to try and motivate and develop individuals. So just to kind of finalise now, what we thought we'd do is, for the last 5 sessions of this, last 5 minutes of this session, look at a bit of a primer to try and encourage players to think about what they're going to be doing next, and try and link and kind of stage some rugby to prime their thinking onto the next session. So Phil, do you want to talk us through those last couple of points and how they would link to the next session we'll outline?
Yeah, I think priming is becoming more and more important, especially within settings where you're limited with time. So priming people for the next session and understanding that they're getting some learning prior to going into that next session. So as I said, Ready for Rugby is about preparing players for contact rugby, as well as being hopefully a fun and inclusive format of the game. And the next stage of this would be that actually, if we're on the double touch, we can now start to look at what might happen in a contact game, is that the player may have to sort of recycle the ball. So go into floor as a ball carrier would be the next option, but still allowing that pop pass. So we're encouraging that support from players to go through. So as they go to the floor, they can pop the ball off the ground. Encouraging that support, or just presenting as they would do as a regular breakdown and ruck. It would also mean that the defender now, who makes that second touch, is also going to go to floor. This will create an offside line using the back foot of that defender. So it's actually creating sort of a little bit more space between the attack and defence, and also taking the defender out of the game. So it creates different challenges and different opportunities for both the attack and defence. To either go forward or to regain possession or stop the attack from going forward. So I think it's the next stage in where we're trying to get to in supporting that. So yeah, I think it's really important. It enables players to just have a little think about what's coming next and get into that session a lot quicker for for session 2.
Thanks, Phil. We'll go into a bit more detail on that on the next session of this webinar. We'll also go into a bit more detail on some of the logistics of managing that session as well, and provide kind of further ideas on challenging and enthusing individual players. But now, thanks very much for listening. Again, any questions, please use our Twitter at Age Grade Rugby, or for anything more specific, please email us at schools@rfu.com. Thanks very much.